They call them the bond vigilantes. They don't carry a gun, they carry a calculator. And this week, they struck again. When governments spend too much, borrow too much, and lose market confidence, the bond markets react. And history teaches us that it can bring even the most powerful leaders to their knees. This week, they claimed their latest victim, Donald Trump, backed down on his tariffs all around the world. This is History Counts. Let's start with the basics. What is the bond market? It's effectively the place where the government sells debt. It enables them to spend more than they bring in through taxation, run a deficit, which is pretty much what every Western government now does. But when those investors in the bond market begin to lose confidence in an economy or in a government and their ability to pay back their debts, they start selling bonds instead of buying them. That means in order to sell more debt, governments have to offer higher interest rates, and so the cost of borrowing goes up dramatically. And when the cost of government borrowing rises, the cost of borrowing across the economy, mortgages, credit cards, all of those different types of debt begin to increase too. This can be deadly for governments. If they can't afford to finance their debts and they can't afford to continue borrowing, their spending plans go out the window. And they come under increasing political pressure too when consumers, their voters, have to spend more to get mortgages and credit cards as well. And generally speaking, when the economy is in turmoil and when stock markets generally are doing badly, people buy bonds because they're seen as a safe asset. So if bonds stop being seen as a safe asset and people start selling them, which is what we saw this week, then governments get themselves into real problems, and it means the situation is really quite dire. Governments of all colours over the decades have fallen victim to the bond markets. The term bond vigilantes first appeared in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan, as President of the United States, cut taxes massively and saw his deficit shoot up. Investors were spooked. They simply didn't trust the numbers, and across the Atlantic, Margaret Thatcher was experiencing similar problems as she pursued a very similar economic plan. Thatcher and Reagan believed in economic freedom, but the bond markets taught them that that freedom has a limit. In the 1990s, the bond markets acted again to limit the power of a US president. Bill Clinton, a Democratic president this time, proposed a heavy spending budget. The bond markets were watching. They didn't like what they saw. The cost of government borrowing soared, and Bill Clinton was forced to back down. Once again, the markets had spoken. Now, of course, we couldn't discuss the bond markets without talking about 2022 and the British Prime Minister Liz Truss. Shortly after coming to power, she and her Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng unveiled what they called a mini budget. We won't get into the details of exactly what their mini budget entailed here, but the key thing to know is that a series of unfunded tax cuts sent markets into meltdown. Pension funds teetered, millions of people's life savings were essentially at risk. In the end, the Bank of England stepped in and bought bonds in order to stop the market falling apart completely. Within weeks, Kwasi Kwarteng was out, the whole plan had been reversed to calm markets down, and Liz Truss followed him soon after. For the first time in British history, the bond markets, not the opposition, not a political scandal, had brought down a government. This week, we finally found out what it is that might limit Donald Trump's power as president. Congress doesn't seem to be doing it, but the bond markets, it seems, can. Donald Trump reversed his tariffs this week because of pressure from the bond markets. He feared, and his advisors feared, that what happened to Liz Truss could very easily happen to him. The key difference is there's no mechanism to remove Donald Trump if he decides to keep going through with his plans. The tariffs are on a 90-day pause. The markets remain incredibly volatile. What happens next is anybody's guess, but for now the bond markets are holding Donald Trump and his plans in check. The bond market doesn't vote, but when it moves against you, it doesn't whisper, it shouts. And for governments that spend and tax without convincing investors, the lesson from history is clear. It's happened before, and it will happen again. I am still a brand new channel starting out. It's just me. If you like what I'm doing, please do subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. If you want me to cover any particular topics on a given week, please let me know in the comments. If you want me to do things differently, let me know as well. Thank you so much for watching.